Hello and welcome back to the Stitchwitch podcast. I'm your host Ourielle. We are going to do another regular podcast episode because for some reason it feels like I have a ton of stuff to show you. So let's jump into it. Okay, so I was going to say pardon if it looks really messy in the background, but I guess it just kind of looks standard and it is just messy. So we are going to do today's episode a little bit out of order because I have quite a lot of things to show you guys. Like I mentioned, I feel like I just filmed an episode like a week ago, but for whatever reason, a lot has happened since then. I guess it's just been a very knit heavy week. So we're going to start with acquisitions, then we're going to move to finished objects, and then whips, and then cast-ons, because I have like 5 cast-ons for whatever reason. Okay, so in my last episode, I had mentioned that we started to do a knitting inventory of my yardage because my goal this year is to stash down around 10,000 yards of stash, which really shouldn't be that hard because I have like a lot of stash. But what I forgot to mention is that we are also now including my husband's stash into my stash because ultimately it is like a shared space. The reason why I'm doing this stash down challenge is twofold. One is that I don't really like the idea of having yarns sit for, I don't know, like more than a year or two. It just kind of feels like if I'm not using a yarn for that long, it's probably because I am making a bad choice. Or I just need to like reevaluate. And then 2 is just like I don't want so much yarn that I outgrow the yarn storage. So ultimately, even though my husband bought these yarns, I still feel like I need to count them. And so we have a couple of acquisitions that are his acquisitions for things that he's knitting for me. He has like a quite ambitious knit list, I would say. And because he needs to learn some knitting skills, he said he wanted to practice them on things that I might find enjoyable, which is really, really sweet of him. So we went on webs and he bought a couple of things to knit through. One is 2 skeins of this really beautiful hot pink Noro Kashirukuru yarn. Kashirukuru. Yeah, I don't know what that means. But it is 40% silk, 30% wool, 20% cashmere, and 10% polyamide. This was a fantastic deal. I don't remember how much it was when we actually bought it, but it ended up being... Do I have the little thing in my yarn notebook? Dang, it's not here. But I remember it ended up being something like 50% off because it was on closeout. And we got 2. There is, let's see how much yardage in here. There's around 165 meters. So I think I have enough to make a hat, like a hot pink hat. Or of course I could use it as color work in something else. I think it'd be really cute in... Caitlin Hunter has that new pattern, the Alpine Bloom vest. I think that would look really cute as a contrast, but this is kind of such a luxurious fiber that I feel like it'd be nice to wear around my neck or something. So I definitely will need to find something lovely for this. It looks like it works up around maybe like a 4mm needle. Yeah, it says 4.5. I think Noro tends to be quite generous in terms of how much drape they like to give their garments, but I would definitely do maybe a 4. It's a single ply, so nice and yeah, like rustic looking. It's got that thick and thin quality that I love about Noro yarn, and I just love Noro. Like I just have an obsession. And so when we found this, I also was like, yeah, this is my favorite. Now this is not a new yarn actually because I have already purchased this before. The last time I got this was in person at Downtown Yarns, and I just love their store. I talk about it all the time. It is extremely aesthetic and very beautiful, but I find it a little bit claustrophobic in there. But I do love this yarn. So when Webs was selling it and they had their Webs discount, we had to pick it up. This is the Sonata from Noro, and this is in the shade Catmint. This is a 35 cotton, 25 viscose, 20 silk, and 20 polyamide. So actually no wool in here. And this is going to be a curio collar by Lydia Morrow. I am so excited to have this. I don't know when Paul is going to make this for me. But when he does, I will be really excited because it is this big clown-like ruff. And the way that you make it is that you can also add a little mohair in there. So we also got the Barocco Ariel color. And this is in one of the Van Gogh, or one of the, I think this is Monet. I remember this being a Monet color, and it's like a variegated tealy, purpley, bluey, pinky, mustard mohair. It's definitely a little bit darker in person than it looked on the photograph, but I'm hoping this is going to be like a cool, brightly colored ruff, which will also function as like a nice spring scarf, as well as pretty much just a decorative piece. So those are part of my husband's yarn haul. Obviously, it's not really it's not really my yarn, but because it, you know, shares a space with our yarn storage, it kind of just is one thing, right? Okay, the next thing I bought was a couple of yarns for finishing other projects. So I have mentioned this before, but I love this Amazon brand of mohair. I mean, I call it Amazon brand. It's obviously not. It's from China. It's called ICC or ICC. But I can't really tell. Yeah, Aisa is the name of the brand, which is, I guess, like loving clothing thought. But I bought 2 shades of pink. These are like the 2 shades that I bought, and they come in a 6-pack, super affordable, I think, because it's only 50% mohair and then 45% acrylic or polyamide or something like that. But I still think for a majority mohair product, this is really good. It kind of is like Diablo from Hobie, if you've seen that, but Hobie's, I think it's like each ball is like $6 or something, right? So this is just like much more cost effective, and therefore I'm able to make much floofier garments. And I wound them together because that's how I'm using them in my project. And this is what the ball looks like together. It is like actually cotton candy textured and colored. It is so perfect. Like, can you believe just how beautiful that is? I could not tell you what colors they are. If you look up mohair bulk or like mohair yarn 6-pack, you will easily find this on Amazon. The only problem is with the current tariffs and everything. I feel like they are no longer available for Prime shipping, so this last shipment took around 6 weeks to get to me, which is really frustrating because I used to get it and it would be maybe $20 for 6 balls of yarn, and then it would take 2 days to get here. So I am a little sad, but I am very glad and grateful that because I ordered a lot of it before 2025, I have enough to work up a lot of sweater quantities. So I added technically this one into my stash this season. Frustrating because I ordered it prior to 2025. I'm not sure whether I will count it as like pre-2025 yarn or not. So jury is still out on that one. I haven't bought any new like yarn for this project, but there's still more yarn to get through. So yeah, that's a little frustrating. Okay, so let's talk about the other yarn that I purchased. One of them was this, which is the local grown yarn from Lion's brand. I love this one. This one is in the color apple pie. My local store said that they had 2, so we placed an order for pickup and then they only had 1. But this is going on clearance. I don't know why. I think it's maybe because Joann is just officially going out of business. I don't know if you saw, but last year they did the bankruptcy restructuring, and this year they're actually just like they're closing. They're looking for a buyer. If they can't find one, I think they're just gonna have to close. So I think they were supposed to have 2 and they didn't, and they only had 1. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. I think it would be really lovely to pair with a dark gray, and I'm thinking it'll be something kind of emo looking. I've been watching a lot of Adventure Time, and I'm making, I'll get into this later, but yeah, I'm thinking maybe this will be part of an adventure type thing. And then the other thing about the local grown wool is I realized how much I love this because of a whip that I just finished. So one of my finished objects is made from the same wool, and it's on sale, it's on clearance because I guess Joann's is going out of business. And my husband returned my Christmas gift because it just didn't really work out for me. And I was saying, with that money, would you like me to knit you a sweater for Valentine's Day? And so we ended up putting that money towards a batch of local grown wool in the color Liberty. That is the navy shade. It is absolutely gorgeous. I don't have it with me today because it's coming sometime next week. But that will turn into an Esther sweater. So the Esther sweater pattern and also the yarn for it is another one of my acquisitions. It cost around $85 for 10 balls of wool, which I think is a pretty good price, given that this is 100% locally grown, milled, and spun wool in the USA, and it's a Aran weight, so it's a kind of expensive quantity. It's like a thick yarn. It's really squishy. I love it. And that's it on that end. I have one more thing that I need to show you guys. So speaking of Joann's, I don't know if you have tried this. This is the Superwash Wool Luxe from their KNC brand. And I bought it in this really interesting shade called Blue Ether. It's not blue, it's green. This is pretty clearly like a dark stonewashed green to me. It's not usually in my color palette. Like, I think it's a really beautiful color and definitely works for my coloration. It's just not something that I usually buy because I'm not really a green girl. But I have been so inspired by Jack in the Attic. Is that her name? Jack in the Attic? Jack No K? I feel like that's her name. I love her podcast, and she wears all black, and maybe a little bit of gray, and sometimes she wears like a disgusting, murky, dirty, oceany green, and I love that. Like, I love that like Asian green look. So I was thinking this is a really palatable version of green. It's almost like a petroleum blue, but like more on the green side. It's a little stonewashed, it's a little distressed, and I am knitting something really cool with this, so it became immediately like incorporated into my active whip pile. But I bought 3 balls of this because it was on super clearance again, so it ended up being something like $10 a ball. You get 215 yards of like DK weight 100% superfine merino wool. It is superwash treated, which I don't like, but because I'm using it in an accessory, I don't mind it, and it feels so lovely. I spent a really long time trying to turn this into an Ostara. No, I spent a lot of time trying to turn this into a in bulk product because I this year made a resolution to knit for the different pagan Sabbats, and in bulk is coming up. And I originally was going to make something in soft sprout, which is why I have balls of soft sprout, another haul item. But it didn't end up working, so then I tried it in this and that didn't end up working either. So now I have new projects for both of those inks, or both of those yarns. And then the last thing that I have, of course, is soft sprout. So I bought this on Amazon. This is Patton's Classic Wool Worsted. I love this yarn. It is my workhorse yarn. Before I really started getting into the Lion Brand local wool, this was like my main go-to product. It's like a worsted heavy DK kind of product, and it's 100% wool, very, very rustic. Not very rustic, but it's pretty rustic. It's pretty hard wearing. If you're familiar with the Croy socks, it's similar. Soft Sprout is a really beautiful yellowy lime color. So really, really yellow lime, or very, very limey yellow. It is one of the colors that Coast tends to do. And I love their sweaters and I love their knitwear. And so today, not today, but like when I was buying this yarn and it was on super sale, and I get it on Amazon, so it's very, very cheap. So typically these are like $9 a ball, but you can get 5 balls for $30. That's what I paid for 5 of these. And yeah, I wanted to make something for in bulk, and I wanted to make a scarf for in bulk originally, but it didn't end up working out. The pattern just didn't translate with the yarn the way I intended it. You know, sometimes it just happens. Like I had no issue with the pattern, I had no issue with the yarn, but something about the pattern itself plus the yarn didn't end up looking the way I wanted it to. So now it's in something else. So that is it for the acquisitions. It actually is like a lot acquisition wise. Yeah, so I'm updating my spreadsheet. I might do like a quarterly check-in because it feels like every month is a little bit, I don't know, like a little too short of a window. So I have been pretty satisfied with the amount that I've been knitting up, especially from my stash. I have a lot of projects going right now, but I do also want to be mindful that, yeah, it might be more motivating to see like a couple months down the line how much I've been doing. So those are all of my acquisitions. Let's move on to my finished objects. So this week I actually only have one finished object, but it's actually pretty big. So it's a cowl, which usually is like small, but this is a big cowl. This is my, again, don't know how to pronounce it, Aculeus cowl, Aculeus cowl. It is my scorpion cowl. Yes, it is gorgeous. All over color work, and I did this wrong. So let's do some base stats first. This is knit in Lion Brand local wool in 2 colorways. One is the lilac colorway, the other one is the dark gray colorway. I don't remember the names, but I'm pretty sure the purple one is just called lilac and the gray one is called Mustang. It is like an off black, like a soft black. It is the same yarn that I used for my tulip loop vest, and I fell in love with it so hard that I immediately wanted to do something else. There are 360 grams of yarn in here. There is 360 grams of yarn in here. It is an extremely thick cowl. It is knit in a tube all the way around, and then you are essentially supposed to make one continuous color chart and then graft them together. But because I messed up the provisional cast on in some really drastic way, I had to crochet them together in the end to get a seam up the back, which is not ideal. It's supposed to be an invisible seam. It's supposed to be kind of an invisible graft in the middle where you get this twist. I will show you what it looks like. Whenever I wear this, I kind of feel like I need to take a nap, or that like it's going to send me to sleep, because it is so big, it's so warm. It is, I'm looking outside my window and it's flirting outside right now. Very romantic, very winter, and this keeps me so warm. I love this when I take walks outside. I just love this for all occasions. It's a fantastic sweater. No, see, it's not a sweater, it's a cowl, but it feels like a sweater because it's so big, it's so thick. The fabric is so plush, and it's beautiful. Like, I have a cat bed for my cats that I've crocheted, and it is like similar in thickness and density and everything. So this project took around, let's see, I have a planner that I use for my knitting now, and I documented. It took me around 2 weeks. So that pink area is how long it took for this project to start. I started it on the 5th of January and I finished it on the 17th of January. So it took me around 2 weeks to finish because it's kind of a large project, and of course that wasn't monogamous knitting because you know you have to work off a chart, but I really enjoyed it. I think the designer has a couple of other patterns, not too many, maybe like 2 or 3 more patterns, and I might be interested in doing those because the color work was really fun, the yarn was really enjoyable, and I love the finished object. It's a very heavy cowl. Obviously that's on me. I did it on like an Aran weight, and it's double stranded and it's in a tube, so yeah, but this is what, around 700, 800 yards of fabric. I'm pretty pleased with the yardage used for such a small little project. And that was my only finished object. Okay, I have quite a lot of whips. Some some worth showing, some not worth showing. Something that is not worth showing is my Bluebird cardigan. I finished a cuff and I just need to do the button band and add the buttons and, you know, finish her off and steek her. The reason why I've been putting that off is because I need to use shorties to do the cuff, or I need to use magic loop, and I don't actually remember what the actual number was for my ribbing. Typically, if I do a body in 4.5mm needles, I'll do the ribbing in 3.75, so I'm almost positive that's what it was, but I'm just not sure, so I have to go back through my videos to figure it out, and I don't like doing that. So that's honestly why I've been procrastinating. It's not a serious reason. It's not a legitimate reason. I really just like want to get it done, but for whatever reason I haven't. So that's not really worth showing. I will just mention, if you're not aware, my fisherman's, my Bluebird cardigan is knit in Lamb's Pride worsted weight yarn, and I have done it on 4.5mm needles in the brown and the pink color. And then again, that's it for active whips. I cast on a lot of stuff just now. I had like cast on Frenzy, so let's get into those. Okay, so like I mentioned, a lot of these acquisitions were immediately applied to new cast-ons. One of the cast-ons that I made was in solidarity / in celebration with my husband. He is making an emotional support chicken. It's not going well. I think the short rows are like really difficult, and it's like a small fiddly little thing. And he was like, do you want to make one too? And I was like, I really don't want to make one actually. So instead I decided to cast on a pattern from my stash. These are the Alma mittens. I just finally decided that I really want a pair. Granted, by the time I finish them, I won't need them anymore. They're definitely going to be something that I keep for next winter because they are giving me a lot of hand pain. But I think they'll be nice to make as a in bulk project, and in solidarity with my husband who is struggling with something small and fiddly and difficult, I figured I should do something that challenges me as well. This is my first traditional mitten, and they are hard. The only other mittens I've ever made were the World's Simplest Mitten pattern from Tin Can Knits, and those were already fiddly at the time that I made them. This kind of feels like sock knitting to me because it's so small and it's so tight, and especially with the mittens, I'm knitting worsted weight yarn on, what, 3mm needles. It is painful. But if you haven't seen the Alma mittens for some reason, here is what I have so far. I'll put a picture of the full mitten as well up on the screen. But I'm knitting this in Soft Sprout and just black from Patton's yarn. And I added a single Latvian braid at the top. If I had any more foresight, I would have added one on the bottom as well. And I think this looks so sick. So yeah, that looks pretty good. I think that looks pretty good from where I am now. I made a mistake on the thumb gusset area, but that's okay because I didn't really know what I was doing when I was reading those charts. I think it's fine. I think there's this like saying that you have to leave a mistake in your work, otherwise it won't look like it was handmade, and I have just really started to believe it because as long as they're not grievous errors, I think it's fine and it's endearing. But this has been giving me crazy hand pain. Like, I can only knit on this for maybe 30 minutes before it really starts to be painful. But I think it's cute. I have wariness about how it's going to fit because I have short hands and they're not like wide hands. They're not any narrower than average hands. They're just like shorter than regular hands. So I don't know how this is going to fit on me, but I am really proud of what it looks like so far. Obviously, I have to make a whole second one and I have to finish this whole thing. So yeah, by the time I finish this, given that I'm only working on it when my husband is knitting and he doesn't knit very often, and given that it is difficult and I need to make breaks and everything like that, I don't think I'll be able to finish this before the end of winter. But, you know, it's fine. There will be many more winters in my lifetime and I can always wear this, you know, this coming winter. But yeah, new technique was the Latvian braid. I was never really that good at corrugated rib, but this corrugated rib looks really freaking good. Kind of looks like piano keys a little bit, but yeah, I really enjoyed this project. I think by the time I'm done with it, I will really only use one ball of each color, maybe 2 balls of each color. So I don't think this will be like a huge yarn guzzler, unfortunately. But if I'm really, really good, I might make a matching tam or beret, like with the same colors. I think that could be very fashion forward. And I'm using it in my adorable Bagoo bag. Like, I love this bag. It doesn't really say, okay, it doesn't say which collection it's from, but I think this one is really cute. So it makes me very happy to see this little project bag. Okay, the next whip I have, or the next cast on I have is not with me because it's at work. It is my work whip. I have many like dead hours at work. Like, there are periods when I have like a lot of stuff to do and then periods where I don't have stuff to do. There are a lot of meetings and I just like having something to do there. And so I started the Pirouette Shawl by Pearl Soho. Now, I maybe am hosting a knit along with Lorelei from Dreadful Velvet, but I think she's gotten sick recently, so we haven't officially started a post yet. I'm ideally going to have a group chat where we can actually like post pictures of what we're doing, post color schemes, and like I think it'd be really fun. I love Lorelai's work. I think she's really cool, and she had mentioned that she wanted to make this, and so I asked her if she wanted to host it along with me, and maybe we'd have like a couple of friends going. So if you would like to knit the Pure White shawl, definitely leave a comment down below. We can add you to the Instagram group chat. I think that's where we're going to host it. I don't really want to set up like a Discord server or anything. But I'm making it entirely out of scrap yarn. I can post a picture of the yarns that I'm using up here, and ideally when I go to work I can take a picture of like my progress so far. I think I've done around 20 squares. And that is knitting on it for like 2 or 3 days. It's a super simple project. It's all stockinette triangles, so you know, very, very easy, very modular. I did a really cool diagram. Pearl Soho has a nice template for you to actually print out and kind of fill in with your own colors, and you can kind of simulate what it looks like. I unfortunately do not have like the 22 colors that they want you to have. I think I have 20, so my triangles will be offset by like whatever the difference was by a little bit, but the way that they've designed it is really ingenious. So that way, you know, none of the colors touch. It rotates in a really particular way. It just looks really good. I'm knitting it off gauge on worsted weight / DK weight yarn, and I think theirs is linen quills like mini bundle. So you're knitting it on fingering weight yarn. Ultimately what that means is I'm just gonna have a really big, comfy, cozy kind of like shawl blanket situation. And I love it. I love the color scheme. I love that there's no pink in there. It's very strange for me to knit something with no pink, but it totally like changes up the vibe. I was really going for like a dark night garden look, but because there are equal triangles all over, the colors definitely dominate a little bit more than the dark. But I like the idea of where this is going, and it really opened my eyes to slightly cooler color schemes that, when I say cooler, I mean like no pink, no warmth, no red, and it was very moody looking. So I think in the future I'd love to make a color work project that is the same vibe but with fewer of the bright pops, but just more darkness, more dusky colors, brown, navy, black, charcoal, and then have like just the pops of chartreuse and blue and teal, and also more green. I've been like really getting into the green lately. I think it really adds a lot. So Pure White shawl is definitely very, very fun. I'm knitting it on 4.0 millimeter needles, and you know, the gauge is kind of like loosey-goosey because they're scrap yarns. Granted, again, with these kinds of scrap projects, because you're knitting with such a volume of colors, you're not really using too much of any one ball. So I have been trying to incorporate as many scraps as I can. So I have a couple of like drops yarns, I have a couple of Lion Brand yarns that I've been using up, and I have like little bits here and there. So I'm not like really sure how I'm going to count up the yardage, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be quite a lot of yardage, considering it's like 120 squares or like 165 squares, and each thing is going to use up something like 50 yards per like little triangle. So should be a decent amount. I think on Pearl Soho they said it was around like 1,500 yards of fingering weight yarn. I think if I make it on worsted weight yarn it might be a little bit more, but then again I'm not really sure how that math works out. So yeah, that's my next cast on. I have a test knit going, which is unusual for me because I don't usually do test knits, but this is from Famke from Famke from Mippy Makes, or Mippy the Label. Yeah, I love her brand. She's also a fellow podcaster, but she's an incredible like designer in terms of like all manner. She does sewing patterns and she also does knitting patterns. She actually was the one who did this little like pouch design. So she got me back into sewing, which I haven't done in years because I was really terrified to sew. But yeah, I made this quilted pouch to put one of my projects in, and now I am test knitting for her, which is really fun. She has made the Sadie Snuggle Hood, which is this really incredible wrap and scarf combo, and I'm so glad I'm testing for her because everyone is making the Sophie hood and slash or the Jose hood or Josie hood. I don't know how, I think it's Josie hood. But I didn't really like either of those. This one, however, is amazing. And I wanted to do it in a medieval mesh look. Like I really wanted it to be like chainmail inspired. So I'm knitting it in the Patton's Classic Wool Worsted in charcoal. Again, I mentioned that I had like a million balls of this stuff. I think I need around 3 balls to finish this project, which will be a pretty good yarn guzzler. And it's just nice. It'll be like a all-in-one bonnet slash scarf piece. I'll show you what it's supposed to look like. And obviously I'll have posted the picture for you to see what she looks like in hers. But it's like a... Okay, my bangs don't look good in this, but it's like it goes around here and then it wraps all the way around the side of your head and then it goes down and then you tie it a little like ribbon. And it's cabled and it's eyelet. So I don't know if you can see the texture. Hopefully you can see the texture. I didn't block this yet, but there are little cables here. There's a bunch of eyelets and this really cool ridge pattern. So for me, I feel like it's giving Juliet cap, or I'm hoping that it gives Juliet hat cap. I want it to be like really closely fitted to the head. I want it to be really nice and warm. I want this to be more of an accessory than anything else. I love that it has so much drape. I'm knitting this on 4mm needles, which is, I think, what's recommended. And she made it on sport weight yarn. Mine is definitely closer to like a DK, heavy DK, light worsted. And I think it looks so sick. Like the little texture for me is quite subdued. I think a lot of people in my test knitting group have decided to go for lighter colors for somewhat obvious reasons, right? Like it definitely shows your work a little bit more brightly. Some people have opted to do it with no eyelets because they live in cold neighborhoods and they really wanted to have maximum warmth. But I thought it'd be nice to do it in a dark color, one, because I prefer darker colors. I didn't want it in black because I thought it would be too close to my hair color, so I opted for gray. I wanted to have that chainmail aesthetic. I didn't have a lighter pearl gray. And also I didn't want to do this in superwash yarn because I like when I can do cables in like full, like natural wool, I guess. And the bonus is that people can maybe see it in a darker color and it'll look a little bit more like there's more variation. I really enjoyed this pattern so far. It's not complicated. I love, first of all, let me say, testing for Famke has been amazing. She is really, really responsive. She updates the pattern very quickly. So if there's issues or like people are coming up with something and it's not super clear, she has sent out like new copies of the pattern instead of just like messaging the chat and saying like, oh, just do this. And also we got a very finished, polished copy of the pattern. So it was test knit, or it was tech edited, and we are test knitting it, but it was like fully finished. So there was no like guesswork. All the charts were like fully aligned, fully written out, very, very clear, very polished. There were images in the pattern. So far, even though I'm not done, I'm like fully able to attest that like it already is doing really well to me. Like I feel like this pattern test has been much more successful than my previous one, just because I feel like the designer is more accessible and the actual pattern itself feels like it's pretty much done. And whatever little issues we had or whatever, like if something was not clear or if the pictures just like weren't exactly right, she was able to actually edit and post the updated version of the full pattern immediately. And I really liked that about her. Yeah, one thing I will say is that I think she's sick currently and she's still like working really hard to get these patterns out, so I feel a little bit bad, but the group is pretty small. I don't think there's a ton of us in there, but yeah, really, really fun. I've enjoyed this so far, and even though it's a little bit more of a mindful knit, like I can't, because there are so many charts and you have to kind of like go back and forth between the charts, I do need to like have time to sit down and like mark stuff down. When I work on this pattern, I have to like actually physically write out like what rows I'm on and like what I'm doing. So that's a little bit, not like frustrating, but it just requires a little bit more energy. So I'm not able to make as much progress on this as I would like to, considering that the yarn is really comfortable and I don't get hand pain and everything. Yeah, so I just wish that I were further along in this pattern. But today that is what I will be working on. Okay, and then I have two more. Crazily enough, I have two more cast-ons to show you. The next one is the Pressed Flowers shawl, which is that thing that I had mentioned I bought this yarn for. I wanted something that would use up a decent amount of this yarn because I bought 3 balls of it, but not all of the yarn because I wanted enough to use in my pirouette shawl because I was missing a color. So I started the Pressed Flowers cowl. This will be my 3rd Pressed Flowers project from the Amy Christoffers collection. There was something wrong with each one that I did prior. So the Pressed Flowers shawl I didn't like because I don't like triangle shawls. I don't like how they're constructed, and I don't like the finished object. So it took me 1 full project to realize it. Now I know that I don't love it. Then I made the kerchief. The kerchief is nice, but it's not super warm as a neck warmer. It works great for my hair, but when I want to put it on my neck, I just feel like it's like warm on one side and not warm on the other side. And I just wanted something that was flat without much shaping. So the cowl is perfect because the cowl is obviously a rectangle that like is long and then it loops on itself and then you close it up. So no shaping required, just the chart. I've gotten much better at the chart. And this is my first green project. And I love this project because you can see much more of the grid. So this is that classic mosaic grid that she has very brilliantly come up with. This is mosaic knitting, so you're not actually doing 2-stranded color work. Again, I needed to take a break from 2-stranded color work because I really injured my hands. I feel like I say this every episode, but I did really injure my hands. I needed to take like 4 days off, which was devastating for my mental health. I was really sad. I was in bed like pretty much all day because I just really wanted to knit. And I just decided I cannot have only color work on the needles. It was just really bad for me. So yeah, this is my other relief project. I need to do like 9 inches of this before I even get to the flower color work chart, but this is a really long project. I think it's like 60 inches of like just this chart because I'm knitting this in superwash, and so one of them is the KNC Superwash Merino Luxe, and the other one is just Patton's Classic Wool Worsted. I have a million balls of this in the house. I'm actually starting to burn through a lot of them, so I don't know how much I will have by the end of all these whips, but yeah, I'm really liking this project so far. It's really nice and drapey because of that superwash wool, which blooms beautifully, and it's super soft, which I really enjoy. So yeah, that's my second to last whip. Okay, I apologize. My friend is blowing up my phone. She took her LSAT yesterday, and so we are celebrating today. And then the last thing is the last project I have, which thank God, because I feel like I'm really anxious. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 objects on the needles. It's like way too many. And that's not including my non-active whips. The last thing that I cast on is the grayling sweater. Oh my god, isn't this so crazy? Like, I didn't even talk about wanting to cast on a grayling sweater, but I did mention in a previous episode that I wanted to make a marathon project, and my marathon project was either going to be a grayling cardigan, which is this really, really floor-length duster version, or a petite knit no frills cardigan. And the more I look at it and I look at the projects, I don't really want a no frills cardigan. It just feels a little bit like, because it's stockinette, it doesn't have any textural elements, and the cardigan that I wanted to replace it with in my wardrobe had something like a half fisherman rib or brioche stitch or something that gave it quite a bit of substantial heft. And I really like the volume and the kind of like thickness and coziness of that sweater. And I just feel like if I knit a plain stockinette sweater, it would just be very drapey, very thin. I don't even have mohair to hold with it, so it just wouldn't be what I wanted essentially, which is a little bit sad. So I figured I would start with the grayling sweater to see how I like the pattern, how I like the construction, and then if I liked it, we could go from there, and I could buy some of the drops. Was it Alaska or Snow? It was like a bulky weight yarn. And this is what I have so far. Yeah, this is the back piece, by the way. I'm knitting it in 1 strand of Wool Ease Roving Origins and then 2 strands of these mohairs, and that is this, right? So I have it all caked up together, and I love just like putting all my yarn together. I don't know if it's like technically recommended that you do that, but it just is so much easier for me to work out of 1 ball of yarn rather than what this would essentially be is like 3 balls of yarn. And the reason why I was so anal about the coloring here is because the Roving Origins, it's like a blush pink, or a blush peach, I should say. So it's very rosy, but it's kind of a dusky, dirty rose, which I think is very wearable for people. It's a more neutral kind of pink, but I don't love a very neutral pink. And in fact, this shade of pink is still like not my ideal pink. It just kind of washes me out. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of close to my skin tone. Like, it's not exactly my skin tone, obviously, but it's close enough in terms of like coloration and saturation that I just kind of feel like it doesn't do much for me. Like, this obviously has more contrast. I feel like it works a little bit better. But the original color of this was even worse. Like, with no mohair, it was even more skin tony because it's more salmony, it's more peachy, and I bought 2 very, very cool tone mohairs to hold with it. So I like the effect. 1 strand is extremely bright and 1 strand is a little bit darker and more lilac-y. So I think when you combine it with the peachy, dusky rose, you get a very dynamic, yeah, it's just a very dynamic fabric. It just has a lot of depth. I love mixing mohairs in with main strands. I feel like that's where you get a lot of the fun, I don't know, like the fun customization effects. And I think seeing the flecks of color in here, sorry, the lighting is not perfect, but seeing the flecks of color just gives it so much more dimension. This sweater is so painful on the hands. It's knit on 5mm needles, so it's not like an uncomfortable size or anything. But because it's like 6x6 cables, they're so hard to do. I obviously have to use a cable needle. I think I lost mine, which is bad. I have to look for it. But I just use a regular Clover cable needle, and it's like heavy. It's thick, it's heavy. Yeah, these are like some chunky cables, and it hurts my hands. So I can't work on this too much, but I will say this was around 1 day of knitting. Like, I knit, well, maybe 2 days of knitting, like 2 evenings of knitting. It's not that much work because it works up so quickly. This is pretty much like an Aran / bulky weight gauge, and I didn't want it loose. I knit the gauge swatch in just like 1 strand of a bulky weight product because I think Knitonomy, who is the designer, she says that you can just use fisherman's wool, and fisherman's wool to me does not feel thick enough to warrant a 5.5mm gauge with like such huge cables, because then what happens is you end up getting these huge gaps after you finished your cable. And that happens, you know, for everyone. It's not like unusual, but even as it is now with as much yarn that I have in here, like this is like a densely packed cable. I think it needs this much yarn. And I've already blocked part of this just to do like a progress check, because I didn't swatch with this. I swatched with the lighter yarn, and the lighter yarn was just not doing it for me. So I wanted to go heavier. I like like I mentioned, I like my yarns pretty dense. I like my sweaters to be pretty hefty. I like them heavy. Like I don't want a light sweater. I don't like that. I like them to be like a little bit much. But I have to say, I love how poofy these cables are. Like they're just big, delicious, juicy cables. And what I mentioned earlier was that I've been watching a lot of Adventure Time. We are on season 8, so we're pretty much almost done. I think there's one season left, but they get shorter and shorter as you keep going. And I wanted to ultimately make one PB inspired sweater and then one Marcy inspired sweater, because they are my favorite power couple. And I wanted the sweaters to look not like actual like sweaters from the show. Granted, one of my favorite aspects of Adventure Time is that like Princess Bubblegum and Marceline wear different outfits throughout the series, and they're pretty much the only characters that do that. Most of the characters have like fixed outfits. I mean, obviously, like sometimes you will see characters in different outfits, but like PB and Marcy like actually wear different outfits every single time you see them, and I think that's absolutely amazing. So I wanted to have sweaters that kind of looked like something they could wear, which isn't saying much because PB just pretty much wears pink all the time. Like this could be a PB sweater. This definitely will be my PB sweater because I'm knitting it while I watch Adventure Time. And then I have some yarns coming in from Wool & Company that they messed up my order because they had like incorrect inventory on their site, and then I changed my order, and then it ended up being like Marcy inspired. So I'm hoping to make a PB sweater and a Marcy sweater and then wear them together, or like wear them back to back. And it's kind of like subtle. I don't think anyone would know, but that's like my interpretation of this. So grayling sweater, one, because I wanted to use up this yarn from Stash. I had a delectable amount of this Roving Origins from a previous Michael's clearance purchase, and I was waiting for the perfect project. I think this is she. And then also like stash busting, also trying a pattern because I want to know if the big version is worth doing. And then also I just wanted a pink sweater because I don't really have, well, I guess I have this one, but it would be nice to have another one. And I'm really liking it so far. It's a really beautiful, yeah, it's just a really beautiful finish. I really enjoy it. And that is it. Yeah, that is it for this episode. I say that like that wasn't a lot. It was a lot. It's a lot of knitting. I have been talking for quite a while, and I would like to knit again. I'm going to work a little bit more on my Sadie snuggle hood, so that will be that. But yeah, I'm really pleased with my knitting so far. I really feel like this year is going to be a good year for me. My last year, I think I was really trying to like find my groove, and I did. And we'll see like how long this lasts, because I didn't knit all of summer last year. I was just really stressed out. Excuse me, I was really stressed out by this gift knit that I promised. And this year, my goal is to do more gift knitting, but it might not be, I don't know, I'm going to try maybe to be a little bit more judicious about spreading out my projects and making sure that, yeah, just like I know myself a little bit better. Now I know that I need to have some new stuff, some easy stuff, some mindful stuff, some fun stuff. Like I want some stuff from Stash. I want some stuff that's new, you know, and just keep things fresh, I think, is what gets me going. And then also my other goal is like make sure I take breaks, because otherwise I will be out of commission for a while. And when I'm out of commission, it really like makes my mental health tank. Maybe knitting should not be like such like a wellspring of like my positive energy and like where I get my life creativity and like joy from. It like shouldn't be that deep. But for some reason, when I don't get to knit and when I'm like deprived of my knitting time, it really does take a toll on me in a way that is like much more serious than I really would have imagined prior. But like now that I know that about myself, I know that the self-care piece is that much more important. So that is everything I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some knitting in or some relaxation, etc., etc. And I will see you on the next one. Bye now.